Now that we have just created our simple graph and imported from data from Yahoo Data Reader, let's get back to Pandas and understand a little bit better the slicing power of Pandas. So basically we have this df merged in memory. So if you have to execute all the code up to here to be able to get this df merged. Okay, and then you have the option to put the list of names of the columns you want. So you're slicing rule for rows, or slicing patterns for rows. I will explain a little bit what that actually means, and then you'll understand the power of mixing all together. So basically, the first one is that, let's say I have this df merged here in memory. So I will drop this and just say, yeah, print df merged. Okay, yeah, that's what I have. Okay, so if I want to, let's say, put to select some rows, some columns, and columns I wanted them to select it by names, first I have to say, well, basically I want to do a filter here. So to do a filter, I have to use the square brackets, and then inside the square brackets I have to put a list. So I'm gonna put a list of elements like norm, adjust, close, and so that it becomes clear for you, I'll run this code, and because first time you see this, it becomes a little bit ugly the way it looks, because for some people they say, wow, but you have two brackets one after the other, and not exactly. So if I have the f, yes you do, but it's not the same thing. So the f merged, this is the way for slicing your data. So applying the rule here inside. So if I create a list, my list here, and then I pass my list into the selector, you'll see that you also get the same result. So you're actually passing a list inside. It's just that the list uses the same symbol, square brackets. So that's why you have a list, and then this is the selector. It could be any, but in Pandas they decided to use the same as the list. So you can pass a list inside a list, inside the selector. So that's what's going on here if I want to select the two. And then I can also pass other things, and one thing that I can pass is an actual rule. So I can say, by the way, let me select all the ones that the norm adjusted close, the column I've created, are bigger than 0.39. So I'll get a false and true list. This is gonna be a list on its own. That is the response of this, that is saying, oh, this is false. So let's see if I'm gonna just eliminate this, so you're gonna see what the actual values are. So this is 37, 0.38, 39, and 39. So if I say I want this rule of, I want all the elements that are bigger than 0.39, it will give me a list of falses and trues, and I can feed it back inside the selector. Remember, that's the how to select. So I can put this rule inside here, and that's gonna only give me the responses of those rows. So here I'm filtering on rows, okay? All those rows where the data or where the norm adjusted close, that's the value of a column, is bigger than 0.39. So I'm actually applying, you see, that's very powerful. I can select some columns, and I can also select some columns here if I want. After that, I can say, by the way, I just want adjust close Americas. And if I do that, if I got the name correct, I'm only getting a column with where the norm adjusted close is bigger than 0.39. So slicing and dicing in Python, in Pandas, is so easy. And remember that funny way of slicing and dicing with starting from the 2, going up to the line 10th, and then jumping, only going on the jumping 1. So going 1 yes, 1 not, 1 yes, 1 not. You can do that as well. So that's the least way of slicing. So you have all the ways of slicing here, and you can combine, for example, combining slicing rules. So I can get the columns, and then the 2 to 10 to 2 type of slicing. And in this last one, I've just simplified it a little bit. I'm actually selecting one column and then applying a rule, norm, the ones that are bigger than 0.4, and then from those that are bigger than from 0.4, I'm applying this last rule, that is get the from the second, from the element 2 to the element 10, that is the 9th element, if you remember, so 0 to 9, and jumping one after the other, so skipping one basically. And this one is applied after the selection of the rule here, because of this order that I'm putting in. So you can play around and say, what happens if I change this one to that? So if I change the order of those two. The funny is that the way Pandas try to guess everything you're trying to do, and sometimes it gives you the correct answer, even though you change the order of things. So I'm not sure if it actually gave the exactly same response. Let's say 0, 4, 0, 4, and 0, 4, 1. Yeah, the same. So you can swap orders. There is no much order between the two here, this and this. This one, that's the last slicing rule, yeah, there is order there. So if you change this one and put it in the beginning, I guess it's gonna break. Yeah, so it breaks. That's the one, because it's actually, if you think about something that happens after. So the first one is select some columns, apply a rule, and then you do the list kind of thing. You know, select from 0 to select the first 10 elements, or the first 100 elements, and then so that's the only one that needs to go to in the very end is this one here. Okay, this but I can't think of anything that you're gonna do for selecting that is not cover pretty much 98% of what you're gonna do. Yeah, there are things that are not, but most things are within the things that you can do with this slicing method. Okay, so now coming back to the Matplotlib. So we have Matplotlib first, and Matplotlib gave us the opportunity, or gave Python community the opportunity to create Seaborn and ggplot. So talking about Matplotlib, it is a very simple way of plotting things, especially if the things that you're plotting are coming from Pandas, but you can do that with lists and other objects. But with Pandas is very powerful, very easy. You can there are many options that you can visit in the visualization that I mentioned with Matplotlib, that I gave you the references, and many options. Of course, there are so many options in Matplotlib that you have to dig on yourself, because there's no time that I'm gonna use Matplotlib and some Bokeh in the future. But if you do want to create a very fancy graphs, that you have to explore yourself. This is Matplotlib and Seaborn and Bokeh. It needs a course on its own. And Seaborn, for most people, if they're gonna create just simple graphs, they use the Matplotlib already built in Pandas, because it's very powerful, it's very easy, and you just put .plot from your pandas and it plots something. If you really want to create fancy graphs with options, people jump straight away to Seaborn. And why is that? Because Seaborn was the community saw a need for making the Matplotlib graphs more pretty. And what they did was just when you ask, please plot this graph, they just looked at that graph, the same as happened in Excel when Excel changed the version. And before, Excel had very ugly graphs, and then it created a new version, Excel 2007 and 2010, with better graphs. So you actually work out how many columns you have, how many colors you should put, and then it decides the colors for you, the size, the labels. It decides many things for you as he actually plots the graph and try to contrast with as the graphs is built. So Seaborn is actually easier for you to change things because it works out how it would the graph would work be nicer or prettier, and you need to do less adjustments using Seaborn. However, nowadays, if you really want to learn a lot about graphs and be very knowledgeable about graph creations, you can't skip the turn onto dynamic and responsive graphs. And what I mean by responsive and dynamic graphs is this. So if you copy this demo.bokehplots.com, you're going to find many examples of Bokeh applications. And so Bokeh applications basically, if you create this interactive graph here, you can play with the graph by changing it. Like you change the dollar, for example, and it disappears some data, and instead of calling all the genders, you can only select the animations, and you can select more dates if you want to, number of reviews, so you put back some so you can interact with the graph. So it's not a static graph, same as in this one that you can just change the origin and color. So you put I don't know, you can play with the graph changes automatically. So basically Bokeh is built in JavaScript. And why is it dynamic and why it can do what it can do is because it's actually running on the server, on the client side. So it's running on the browser of the person. So the data is fed to the browser, and the browser, the Bokeh backend, if we can call that, it actually draw the graph in the moment. So if the person changed the criteria, select more data or less data, he actually draw the graph again. So being realistic, what can you do with Matplotlib and Seaborn? You can do a lot, but you can do much more with Bokeh and Plotly. So people are actually moving to Bokeh and Plotly if they really want to do like cool things with graphs. Okay. So let's do an example here of creating a simple graph into Bokeh. So if I just run this part here, and if we look enough, we could see a graph created with Bokeh that we can scroll to here, and then we could add options here, and the Bokeh would understand the option. I haven't created that option in here, but in any case, that's the potential that Bokeh accepts. So Bokeh is nothing but a bridge between Python and D3.js, so JavaScript that is running on the client side. In Python, we are a bit lazy and we don't want to learn JavaScript just to create some cool graphs like the ones that we found with Bokeh. So there is a library that's Bokeh that bridges for us. So we basically ask Bokeh, please plot this graph that way, and he creates the HTML file, the JavaScript, and all the data that it needs to be fed to the browser, and the magic happens. Cool, isn't it? Finally, I just leave you with some references on Matplotlib here. A lot of things that you can see that can be created: scatter plots, box plots, and another kind of, and then how you put some label into or some legend on your data. And that's all that I wanted to show for you guys. So good luck with the forum. And if you have any questions, just drop me an email.